but I will welcome up Blake Samic, our head of product operations at OpenAI. Nice to meet you.
Thanks. All right, Blake, welcome.
I know your name.
Yeah, well, know yours as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I know a lot of us are really excited for this conversation. I think everyone's very excited to hear how the sausage is made at OpenAI. But before we get into that, I wanted to start with a little bit of your own career and journey in product ops. So you not only lead product ops at OpenAI, but you've been at Uber, at Stripe, at some really iconic companies during their hyper-growth phases. And would love to hear just how you got into product operations and the story of your career.
Yeah, so I started my career really at a big company, at GE in a leadership development program, and then really wanted to get into startups. And joined one, a great one, Shoutlet at the time, and I was like employee 20, going from 300,000 down to 20. Great set of experiences. That's what brought me to the Bay. Mm-hmm. And then things really got interesting when I joined Uber. And I had multiple roles there. I had one to begin with that was only a few months, but I got tapped to lead this new team called Product Operations shortly after it got started. And the reason Uber created that, the company was scaling rapidly. Like they were building more features in parallel. They had many more cities that were coming online. We had employees that were in all those cities. And we had this really growing disconnect between the people building the technology, who were all in San Francisco at the time, and what was called operations, which was the collective term for all those city teams everywhere. And product ops really was created to make a really strong connection between those groups so that we had really tight feedback loops about what is actually working down at the city level. They know what's coming from the product teams, and we didn't have to have any of those painful moments where they didn't know what was coming, and it was blindsiding them, and just really getting those groups to work much more closely together. So that's kind of why we coined that term, product ops. And amazing set of experiences. We could talk about Uber forever here, but I think one thing I'm pretty proud of that phase is. This post from Allison, I think, summed it up pretty well, but there were so many people who were on the product ops team there that just went on to do, and continue to go on to do, just amazing things. And I think that's just such a cool thing for someone to be a part of, and I feel really, really proud of all those people and proud to have worked with them in such a cool place at a cool time. Shortly after that, I joined Stripe, and I started talking to them about product operations. They actually said they were thinking about starting product operations, and for a minute I was like, well, why do you need that? Because you don't really have this sprawling set of city teams around the world, and what I was kind of initially thinking of product ops. But as I got to talking with them, they had all these very similar problems that come with being a scaling tech company. They still had the situation where a lot of people didn't know what was coming within the company. They were blindsided by new features. People who had been there longer were able to navigate and get things done more easily. They didn't feel like they had their voices heard, and the constituents were different. You're still thinking about how to build this connective tissue inside the organization and make it smoother, but it wasn't necessarily city teams. It was more, how do we connect sales and support and legal and security and make sure that they feel like they have a voice and they have the right way to plug in with product development. Yeah. And I guess my mind switched at that point to think of product operations more as how to just operate well as a product organization. Yeah. Which includes how you do that internally to your product and development organization and share across that, but also how you do it with your key partners and a bunch of those other functions. And then I started to realize, okay, a lot of companies need this. And anyway, that really resonated at Stripe. A lot of similar stories to some of this with some of the folks that were there. And most recently, I joined OpenAI just about 2 years ago now, shortly after the release of ChatGPT. And I think probably a lot of folks in here, I was totally fascinated by that, by DALL-E before that, which was one of the first image generation models, and Codex, which was the early code gen tools, and it just really kind of flipped something in my mind, now's the time for AI. I'd been following it for quite some time. Even when the company was founded, I thought that's so interesting what they're doing, but really got into it and wanted to kind of take a pass at it. And as I talked to them, and told some stories really of product ops at Uber and Stripe, both consumer experiences, B2B experiences in the Stripe case, it really resonated with them. And they're like, we need to become this great product company now in addition to this amazing research company. And so, one thing led to another, and I started this product operations journey again, and it's been really fun.
And here you are.
Yeah.
And so you've been, really at the forefront of product operations at a number of hypergrowth companies. I want to kind of zoom in on OpenAI, and I think probably many in the audience aren't as familiar with product operations. So give us, a little bit of the way that you think about and articulate the mission and the focus of your team at OpenAI.
Yeah, it's really, if you caught me just for a second, I would say it's help the product development team operate better. To expand on that more, it's thinking about what is the way that we operate, what is the way we have connective tissue. It's recognizing that you're not just shipping a lot of products, you're shipping a lot of information in your company, and all that just leads to things that could be smoother and faster. And so broadly, I think about it kind of two ways there. One is all about what I kind of call the rails. It's how do we set up the right processes or systems that a lot of teams can plug into easily, and really getting the right level of structure for that. But it's not about a particular product team or a particular product, but it's very, very critical. And then the other part really is all about particular product teams and launches, and really going deep in a very hands-on way to run the testing of the product internally, run the beta in a lot of cases, run all the kinds of activities around the launch day, all kinds of things that need to happen to make a launch successful, and really partnering closely with different product teams. Yeah,
that's awesome. What a great breadth of the company and roles that you get to work with. So you've been at OpenAI through a really transformative chapter of the company. You said you joined right after ChatGPT launched. Obviously, OpenAI has gone through multiple massive transformations, one of the fastest growing software companies. What's it been like to be building out the product operations function during that time period of growth at the company? And how has the role really evolved since you've been there?
Yeah, it's been, a really amazing experience for sure. I think just to give a sense for kind of even week one type of things that I was doing coming in was, first thing, I had two quick wins. One was around getting a launch calendar in place. Even though that was kind of earlier on this chart that was here, and we weren't yet shipping a ton of stuff that even elevated to that level on that chart. There's many things that are in between this that you don't even see on here. It was in a bunch of different places. And so it was really just starting, let's just get it in one place. What are we putting out the door from a product and eng perspective, and just get that going. And that was when I explored options there for what tools to use. My quick gut said, just do something scrappy in Google Sheets. And at Stripe, we had really pushed the Google Sheets to its absolute limit there. And then we actually ended up building with code our own internal launch cal tooling, and really went deep on that. It was once we saw leverage. And so I had come in with all that know-how of just how it should function, and started to look around. Actually, Peter Deng, former Airtable, suggested check out Airtable now, and I did, and I was really impressed, I think, with a few things. One was the interfaces layer had come way further than I had remembered it when I had checked it out before. So I was really excited about that. It really felt like a polished web app, and I could be really tailored about the experience I gave to different people. I thought the building blocks were great. Just in using it, I think you can feel the craft in the product, which is awesome. And then I also like the data, just portability of it. Because at that point, for sure, I didn't know how locked in I was going to be, but I really liked that I could get it out, do some analysis somewhere else, get it back in, and I still love that today about it. So anyway, launch cal, easy first win. And I think another one that was AI related was around feedback, where we were talking about what are the biggest feature requests that our customers have for our enterprise product. And I saw that someone had set up a form to capture feature requests from the sales team, well-meaning, but there was hardly anything in there. And it was okay, they just weren't thinking about doing that in their natural flow. But then we saw there was a Slack channel that was a really active conversation between the sales team and the product team, where they were talking all day, every day about this stuff. And just had the idea to really basically take all of those conversations from the past few months and run it through GPT-4 at the time, and a little light coding on top of it, but really can make a dynamic view of these are the top things that all those customers are asking for, automatically stack rank, click exactly to see what the quote was. And it was this like moment of like, oh, you can go from a very unstructured thing, just where people are conversing, to something that is giving you the structure that you need, which is really cool.
Yeah, so cool. So I want to jump into some of your AI use cases. Obviously, you're an AI company. You're supporting the product orgs across OpenAI. You have some really great use cases that you've deployed both inside and outside of Airtable. So talk us through like where you've seen the biggest impact of AI in product operations.
Yeah, I think to start, this is just a view of what a normal, you can think about this like a feature that we're launching. And this is one that we launched a while back. But this is kind of the structure that we have generally inside Airtable. Is kind of the core. You have what we call a project, which would be like this feature. You have milestones within it, which are certainly the user-facing milestones. Like when are we going to beta? When are we going to GA? When are different product SKUs get the feature? And then we have what we call updates. So the leader of this project would be giving it a short update, very short, once a week. And I think that is something that I really wanted to get in place actually very early on when I joined, because we were not a ton of people then, but we were going to be a ton of people later. So I really wanted to try to get some of that hygiene going. And so you have, through those basic building blocks, you end up with like a really interesting set of information that then you can apply AI to. But I think the structure is so important. And I think Airtable's nice at giving us that frame. I think if you go to the next one, you can see, and by the way, the rest of these are going to be fake projects, so that was a real project, but you can get a flavor for how we would look at this kind of thing. So, we are very regularly looking at the next probably 8 weeks of what's coming up. As you might imagine, even more closely on the next couple weeks of like what's coming, and we have views like this that show you, chronologically, these are big milestones that are coming up, but also here's a quick AI summary of the latest update from that project lead. So they can write a longer one, and we hope they write a slightly longer one than that. But this gives a really super digestible look across everything. I love this term ambient awareness, where you can have so many more people in the organization just have some idea of like what's happening in a lot of places, and they can dig in to have more info when they need it. And so I think views like this are really great. We started off with what's launching as the first hook into using a tool like this. And I think as that gets to a good place, you can really then expand it into other things. So all those projects or all those teams that are launching something, they also, they did planning at one point, and they did design throughout, and like those kinds of things. They did early internal things, and so you can kind of expand back from there. But I think this has really been a nice view, and it allows us to use those AI fields to summarize, and then to also like isolate certain things, like help needed is one that I really like, where we can look across all those updates that are coming in every week across 50, 60 projects that are happening, and very quickly isolate like where does it seem like someone needs help, and really try to marshal some resources their way, or go have an unblocking conversation. And I find that to be really great. If you go to the next one, I'll show you a couple more.
Yeah. And who are the consumers of all those updates? So you said the ambient awareness. Is it primarily your kind of product leadership teams, or go-to-market teams, or executive mixture of all of them?
It's a mixture of all of them, and I think you need to think about what views are most appropriate or helpful for all those groups. There is like basically a weekly snapshot of these are all the key projects, or all these things that we're shipping, that goes out mainly with the exec team as the audience, but it gets shared with basically everyone to go and check it out as they like. And that started off as an exec ask, but then we saw a lot of benefit in just like lots of people knowing about those kinds of things. And you can take that type of thing, and another fun use of AI is you can not only make it a newsletter, but then you can very easily make it a podcast, and like these kinds of things internally to help people be engaged in different ways that they like to consume it. A couple other things here, using some of the AI fields within Airtable. I mentioned like the help needed type of use case there. Another one that I really like is, product operations, is not the sexiest thing, but your hygiene of your data is important. And so you want to be thinking about what are we really launching? Is it really matching up to what people are saying? And so as you get updates from people, you can very easily automatically check like, hey, someone wrote this in their update, but the milestones they have in the system like don't match exactly. Like, and then you can just go and just more surgically fix some of those things. And no blame. It's just like, how do we just like get it to the truth as fast as possible? And so I love that kind of thing actually for Airtable too.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome use cases. I think you've got one more here around your Google Docs summaries and team mission. So walk us through how you use this integration to help surface what the teams are focused on and working on.
Yeah, so I think I imagine if any of you are at larger companies, you do go through a planning process of some kind, and like nearly nobody loves it. And it's in my roles at these places, I've been like deeply involved in that and like kind of thinking about how that should evolve over the time. One thing that I've like really loved is we now have a way to basically we have teams write. We try to keep it brief, even when we ask teams to write for like their plans. Things are moving so dynamically. We don't want to have too much process on the stuff. We want to find this right line. So it's still only like 2 or 3 pages that they might write for like a reflection on the previous quarter, what they're going to do in the next quarter. But then we can use the model to really, the smarter models definitely to go through and read all the documents and make like really structured, simple one-sliders about just like really key info. Mm-hmm. And it goes back again to this like ambient awareness situation where it's like, how do we have it so many more people just like have a pretty good idea of what is going on, and they can go read in depth in the areas that make the most sense for them. But we get out of the situation where there's a bunch of planning docs that really no one reads. Yeah. And I think this has been really great and like eye-opening for people to be like, oh, now I know what's happening across many teams. And I think we were going to talk about maybe a little bit later, but I think some of the stuff that's been more surprising and super interesting about using AI in this context is you can use some of those same methods where you're essentially looking at each of those planning docs and you're summarizing them in one case. You can also ask specific sets of questions across all of those docs at once that are tailored to specific audiences within your company. So like an example might be that you have a partnerships team that really needs to think about what partnerships do we need to do with all these different companies, and how are product teams thinking about that. It's really easy to make 2 to 3 pages of summarized bullets for them that says, here's all the places that product engineering mentioned a partnership of some kind. And you can kind of take that same idea and you can do it for international expansion. It's like, where are all the places that someone mentioned a specific country for something? And there's certain employees in your company that are really thinking about that, whether they be working with governments or they be working on sales expansion. And so I think that's been a really powerful idea. I think also as the models have gotten more advanced, like just recently, O3 Pro is like kind of the most advanced thing that you can use right now. And to be able to take really all of those plans and give it to O3 Pro and say, look across all this. Like, what do you think we should be? What flags do you see? Like, how should we be thinking about different teams working together? And what are some like real conversations we should have in the room? I find it to be really interesting for those kinds of use cases where you want to maximize those time that you have together in the room. And so like, you can use it for something like that. You could say, here is a set of strategies that maybe the product and engineering teams have put together. Here's another set of strategies that the sales team has put together. Look at them both and tell us, like, what are the 4 things we need to go talk about that we're not totally aligned on versus like everyone just like kind of restating the stuff that is really obvious. And I think it's been really eye-opening and cool for that.
I love that. Automated meeting agendas. That's great. Yeah. So you've kind of built out this hub, this system of record, like around product at OpenAI with Airtable. Like, what are the impacts that you've seen of producing that central source of truth and the ambient awareness that you've been able to drive to the various audiences that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I think with just having one source of truth that you keep coming back to, and you commit to it, like you have to really commit to it at least weekly to kind of true up that thing. Because like lots of teams are moving fast and they may not be updating it immediately, and I think you need to be okay with some of that, but then you need to like really do the work centrally or through agents or however you do it to kind of get things back up there. But if you have it, it gives you this really great thing to look at to see, okay, what things are stacking up next to each other? Is there an opportunity to maybe move one thing a day earlier so that it is a little bit more impactful in how we come out to the world with it? Generally, we would try to not slow anything down for that kind of reason, but like sometimes it makes sense if it's really a few days to kind of bundle some things together. It's been great for that. I think it helps us more easily isolate things that are at risk, need help. There are some things that you might not think about they're definitely just like these like hidden drag kind of things that you might have on your PM team or your engineering team. Like an example might be, no offense to the accounting team, but like they, from time to time, they might come and say like, hey, what did we really ship like in the last quarter, and those kinds of things. And instead of like having to ping everyone and try to get all that together, you like have a lot of that stuff in one place. And as we've expanded from just what's launching out of engineering teams, we now can see things like, okay, well, what are the actual marketing moments that are happening that are tied to that? What are the kind of the models that are upstream that are being trained that are going to be enabling those new capabilities, and how do those tie to those features? Like those kinds of things, I think are really helpful. I didn't mention it earlier, but one, I think, really critical part of our setup, that maybe seems obvious, but we have this thing called the hallway intro that I think is just like a really great practice for any company, for any project or anything that you've got. Like, how would you explain it to someone in like 2 sentences that isn't close to the work that you bump into, like in the hallway is kind of the idea. And if you can get good hygiene around that, again, it goes back to that ambient awareness, and you'd be surprised at how many connections just get made of people who now know way more about what's happening, and you can just move way faster as a set of people.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So you've now set up this product operations function at multiple companies. You've really been at the forefront of integrating AI into product ops. Our team has certainly gotten a lot of feedback and ideas from you and your team. I think there's a lot of folks in the room who are probably building product ops functions or similar functions for their companies for the first time. So what advice would you give to anyone else who's looking to really transform their operations with AI?
Yeah, I imagine I'm talking to a set of folks here who are deep in a lot of operational roles, and so I think you get that you need some structure, and that's like a good place just to have going forward. You kind of shape how the work can happen, and you get that line right, between chaos and bureaucracy is like what we always like try to find that line. But I think once you have that in place, I think another interesting switch that you can make, the first is just, are you using ChatGPT or AI in general in this age of AI in many more use cases in your day? Like, how do you think about just moving from maybe summarizing an email to this is now a thought partner on this new thing I'm doing, or more of a strategic use case, and just try to use it more? I think in doing that, you just uncover what it can really do. In some cases, you feel like what it can't do yet, but you get a feel for it, and it can really augment you in a way that you yourself can have way more impact. So that's one switch, and I think everyone probably is on that path. And then another, I think, is when you move from the impact you're having is not just what you're getting from ChatGPT or the LLM when you ask it a question and get something back, but the model starts to do things for you in the background. And so that's a big part of what we're working on in our products, but even in our API today, and via Airtable is like an easy way to enable this kind of thing. Like, you can have basically an AI column that is just running, and it automatically does things based on whatever comes into some other column. And so a simple example is update comes from project team, summarize it, send it out to Slack. Like, these kinds of things are great, and you can start to batch these types of things, and they're just happening, and you can think about, okay, well, what are the 20 other columns that I would want to have on this? I think that's an easy way to get started with some of these things happening in the background, and I think that's something that is good to get familiar with, and then I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for that in the future.
Yeah, really, it sounds like embedding it in the workflow, but also finding ways to kind of take the work off of other people's plates.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, like I could have never asked, like, whatever size team I've ever had, go read all these updates and summarize it, please, just to like a tweet. Like that. It's like that's a tall ask for like a professional.
Yeah.
At a certain point, but now you can just do that pretty much endlessly. Which and it's what are those types of use cases that it opens up at scale? I think can be quite interesting.
Yeah, awesome. As you kind of look forward, you think about the future of product and product operations. Obviously, the roles are changing a lot right now with AI. Like, what are you most excited for, and what are some of the kind of new capabilities or offerings that you're thinking about bringing into your product ops practice or tooling?
Yeah, I mean, we want to think a lot about that first bucket I mentioned of like what are those things that we can do to enable like all the product teams, and does mean build more tools, put more self-serve things into their hands, not necessarily need to be embedded everywhere doing it. We can do that on the more important stuff, but then like really expand that out. Just broad trends I'm excited about. I think people probably have heard maybe about vibe coding as a thing, and the basic idea there is you're really talking to the AI model about an app that you want to see, and I'm excited even now about just like the small, quick things that you can make for that. I mentioned earlier the small use case of taking a newsletter and making it a podcast, and you're just going to use it internally. Those kinds of things like pop up all the time. We just have these little ideas, and so I want product ops to be building a lot, and we are. I think that's something that I definitely look for folks now that have a lot of this, these amazing qualities we always look for, but certainly the tinkerer, the builder that is like really into this low code, no code, vibe code, whatever have you. But like you're gonna be building things. Yeah. And just be building more things and be okay with some of them being like almost like toys and like throw away, and just like that can lead to like really interesting places. That, and I'd just say that the more agentic stuff, as you could break apart some of the stuff that product ops typically focuses on, and you could think about an agent focused on any one of those places. And you could think about agent type of things to help with internal dog fooding organization of how do we get all the feedback from this new feature, running an alpha or beta, running a launch. I think that's all going to be augmenting people and really helping them. I think it's going to be still super helpful and important to be having the person-to-person contact inside our company too. Like the folks that we have, I think, are amazing cross-functional bridges. And I think even if you had 15 agents, I don't think it would work anyway yet, like fully without those people there. So I could really see like each of those people having many of these agentic things that are kind of at their orchestration, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just wrap up on a fun question. What do you think is the first UI you're going to vibe code on top of the Airtable systems that you built out across your team at OpenAI?
I think there was a slide that was removed. Yeah. No, there's just like one way that we have really liked seeing what the next 8 weeks look like in like a really condensed, info dense way that's not totally possible in the current interfaces. So I think something like that. Another one that I've requested that I'm happy to vibe code myself now is like more of a news feed type of view as well, because we have all these updates coming in, and in the current ones, they just kind of get concatenated or look too small. So I want to make something that's a little bit more like that. But awesome. Some initial ideas.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is really great. Really appreciate you being here.